So we have a couple different energies that are pretty poignant, which are showing up in the reading today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the cards initially just as a tarot reading. Then I'm going to go through them again in regard to what they're referring to by way of astrological transit. And then we're going to take a look at the diagram so that hopefully you can get a better understanding of what I'm talking about by way of a visual aid. So, my name is Katie Cat. This is our Monday Astro Tarot, and I just want to take a moment to let you all know that I am available for readings if you would like to have some time to explain your chart to you, to look at some of these transits that are going on, or if you'd even just like a straight tarot reading. I am available for all of these things, and I will put the link below. Also, if you don't have time for a reading, but if you have been getting some kind of benefit from these readings and you'd like to contribute to my well-being and existence, of course, that would be appreciated as well. And the link for that will also be below. Now, our opening card for the day, we have the Page of Cups. So there's a lot of reflection that we've been going through. And in some ways, you could say that there are aspects of our being that are going through a process of dissolving. We're dissolving some lower nature aspect of ourselves so that we can actually refine this higher self that we've been working on. Now we see that this person is looking into a cup and there's this little fishy looking up at them within it. And behind them, there's this big body of water. So this has to do with some kind of emotional realm that we've been working with and some place that we've been in deep reflection. The challenge that we have today came in by way of the Eight of Swords. So this limitation around a situation that doesn't seem to be moving, but it will move in time. We see a female-bodied character who is being wrapped with some kind of rope or cord. They are blindfolded and they're surrounded by these 8 swords that are standing vertically upright in this beach that they are standing on. But in the background, there is the sun breaking through the clouds. And so there's this energy to this card, which is kind of highlighting this effort that we've been putting towards something that hasn't really gone anywhere. And if you imagine yourself, although it might not be a fun experience, feeling bound by an experience and feeling like your eyes are covered and you can't really see what's going on around you and you feel stuck in it. It's almost as if all of your effort and energy is just making you get that much deeper into the sand beneath you, which is challenging, right? It's especially challenging on our mind. And yet this card is telling us to have faith that things are shifting in time and to not forget that variable of time, to stop wasting your effort and just allow yourself to sense that things will shift. Now, the way that we are going through the challenge came in by way of a major arcana. So we do have some kind of life lesson that we are working within the context of the situation that we are reflecting on. Now, the major arcana of the Emperor is the one that showed up onto the table today. And this is someone who is very much armored up, but they are taking a knee into the situation and looking out into the horizon. So this is a character who's also in deep reflection and looking inwardly how to organize something. This is a person who brings order out of chaos. And it's a card that is referencing the Aries energy and the Mars energy, which I'm going to talk about in just a couple of minutes here. But the energy behind this is this, man, how do I want to put a word to it? It's like a motivating force to create order out of something that has just been spun completely out of the range that it was meant to be in. And so how do you bring it all in, right? We see that he's looking out onto this environment and there's this window in the mountain behind them. So how do you see this situation? That's what is being brought to the table as far as how we work through this challenge. And interestingly enough, the aggressor is in the way that we're going to get through the challenge. Now, as the ultimate outcome, I pulled us 3 cards. So we have the Knight of Pentacles, clarified by the 9 of Wands, further clarified by the 2 of Pentacles. So lots of earth energy here. But there's this Knight that we have on the, in the mix here, who is telling us to have patience, to go slowly, to not move too far ahead of yourself. So, it's as if you were the warrior on the warrior field, you can't plan what you're going to do once you get over on top of the mountain, because you don't know what's on the other side of the mountain, right? You can only deal with those things that are directly in front of you, and you have to pace yourself to not jump too far ahead of yourself. So there is this, quality of patience that comes into the Knight of Pentacles whenever he arrives, and also this ability to not skip steps and to approach practical matters. Now, another thing that this card can be referring to is our need to really tend to our resources and plant ourselves there. With a lot of the shifts and changes that have been happening in the last couple of years, many of us may be feeling that. And it is quite possible that whatever you're reflecting on is kind of pulling your energy away from the brass tacks of things that, help you take care of yourself. And so it is, in a lot of ways, trying to redirect our attention to that which builds and brings us stability in a foundational way. Now, having that clarified by the 9 of Wands and the 2 of Pentacles, it's as if we've learned this lesson before. We have to learn from our past mistakes of where we put our will and our energy out in different areas that ultimately draw us away from that clarity of what we feel like we need to be focusing on, which more likely than not is practical matters. Now, this person is also gathering themselves after some big experience, and considering that this is a 9, and it also was on the table a couple of days ago, may I just add as well, 9s are numbers of completions. So there's something that we have gathered through this experience, which is kind of wrapping up. And it's reminding us to keep our values in front of us and to let our path be balanced by those values. With the 2 of Pentacles, we see someone who is having harmony in the midst of chaos. They're walking on this tightrope. They have one coin in one hand, one coin in another, and there's this swelling body of water off to their side. Well, if they look over at any of those ships and look at that surging body of water, they're more than likely going to fall off that tightrope. And so consider what it is that you feel like your attention is pointing for you to focus on right now, and allow that to be your focus point as you go through all of these other things, because time is an interesting variable, and it tends to weather us and weather situations in its own special way. And there's a lot of things that we don't see in this situation, particularly because the challenge that is coming up for us today in the reading is the energy of this blindfolded and bound being at center stage here. So when we look at what's showing up on the table by way of the energetics of cards and by way of astrology, our opening card, which actually just fell off the table, this Pisces energy of the Page of Cups, is a mutable water energy. Right now, we have a lot of planets that are up in Pisces, and the main one being the sun, right? Because we are in the time of Pisces right now, from the end of February to near close end of March. So we're in Pisces for another, couple of weeks or so. But Pisces is the sign of dissolution, like dissolving of things so that you can be born out of something new. And a lot of times the Page of Cups is talking about that doorway. So when we look at Pisces right now, we have the sun, we have Mercury, and we have Neptune all in Pisces. And we are going to have a full moon tomorrow, and after that full moon, we are also going to have Saturn move into Pisces. And Saturn is a planet of, in many ways, a planet of sobriety and responsibility. And Pisces is the sign that governs the ocean, right? There's like so much going on in the ocean. It's vast. It seems never ending. And it's also this realm of illusion and a realm of possibility and a realm of dreams. So there's so much that in the realm of Pisces is considered like depth, but undefined. And having Saturn show up in that sign is like we have this big authority coming into the room, which is making everything get straightened out and come into some kind of structure, right? It's bringing structure to this undefined area. And so where you may have experienced some kind of fantasy or illusion in your life and in realm of like, oh, this would be great if this just happened, Saturn brings some clarity to that, you know, what that actually looks like so that we can become more refined in that space in our lives. Now, the other influence that's showing up on the table today, which I think is so telling and interesting in regard to what a lot of us are working with, is this Emperor card. Now, the Emperor card references the planet of Mars, which governs over the sign of Aries. Now, if we look at those two influences and where they are in the sky, right, we have Mars, which is over in Gemini, okay? Mars is that aggressive energy, and Gemini is our communications and our mind and how we see things and how we think about things. And having Mars in that area of Gemini has likely stirred up some conflicts in your life, depending on, of course, the people that are close to you and where their sun or their Mars is actually placed in regard to their natal chart. Now, what do I mean by that? Am I just talking gibberish at this point? Do you even understand what I'm talking about? Okay, so as an example, right, for myself, I have a Virgo rising, okay? And a lot of people know their sun sign and their moon sign, and they may even know their rising sign, but they likely don't know that your time of birth actually sets the dial of this wheel. So, for instance, I was born at 2:20 in the morning. So my sun is down here in Scorpio, right here, close to the bottom of the chart, right? 2:20 a.m. If I was born around sunrise, my sun would be over here, and then I would have a Scorpio rising. If I was born at noon, my sun would have been up here at the zenith position of this chart, and I would have had an Aquarius rising. Whereas if I was born at sunset, Scorpio would have been over here on this side of the chart where my sun would be, and I would have had a Taurus rising. So the reason why that is important is because if you watch how these little pins move around this wheel, if I had had a Taurus rising, that would have placed Gemini in my second house, which would mean that Mars would be stimulating my need to earn resources right now in almost in an aggressive way. But I was born with a Virgo rising. So I have my Gemini up here in my zenith position, which means that I have been feeling a lot of need to put my energy and effort toward building my career and like building a legacy that I want to share with people. However, and this is why I bring this up and why I started doing the Astro Tarot, because tarot cards are not only just symbols that have meanings attached to them. Many of them are actually associated with zodiac signs and planetary bodies. And that's actually how the system of the tarot was built, on numerology and the elements and the sacred trinity and the law of four and the zodiac and the planetary bodies, because it was meant to be a tool for self-awakening, not necessarily a fortune-telling device. But that's how you kind of get information through, right? Like people think that the tool is used for one way when it's actually used for something else, quite intentionally, actually. So the reason why I bring this up, okay, is that Gemini for me is in this 10th house position, right? But we had two key players that showed up on our reading today. We had the Pisces energy and we had this Mars Aries energy by way of the Emperor. Now, we see that the Mars energy is up here in Gemini, but we also saw Pisces coming in on the table, right? And Pisces is over here for me in the 7th house, which is the house of relationships and contractual relationships, whether they're romantic relationships or whether they're business partnerships. And also one-on-one, like really close friendships tend to represent this 7th house. Now, in the 7th house is where Pisces is at right now with the Sun and with Mercury and Neptune. The thing about Neptune, though, is that it is at specifically, let's see, Neptune is at 24 degrees right now in Pisces. But what's interesting is that Mars is at 22 degrees of Gemini. Now, you may not know this, but there's this square relationship that is going on between these two signs because they're both considered mutable signs. And that is a whole nother section of class to explain active, passive, and mutable energies in this system. But if you're interested in that, let me know. I often explain it to my clients. Now, the interesting thing about this square is that it's creating a challenge, right? Because it's a 90-degree angle. And challenges create friction in our lives. And friction creates fire. And we can either use fire to get warm and cozy, or we can use fire to burn things. And if you'll notice, just by coincidence of this square here, there is this friction happening between my one-on-one relationships and my career path and my life legacy. Now, that's actually showing up in my life right now. I am finding that, especially as Saturn is moving into this area of Pisces over the next couple of days, and I happen to have Saturn in my 1st house over here in Virgo when I was born, it's really making me be a lot more clear around what relationships I want in my life, what one-on-one friendships I have and want in my life, what kind of business partnerships I have and want in my life. And it's kind of trimmed the fat in a lot of ways. You know, it's like, okay, well, I don't just want a business partner, right? Like this undefined thing, or I don't want just a partner, this undefined thing. I need someone who's going to show up in these specific ways. And if they can't show up in those ways, then it's like they don't make the cut, you know, of clarity within this aspect. Now, that can affect you and your relationships in a lot of ways, because let's say, for instance, you have a close friend or relationship with someone who has a Gemini rising, okay? That places Mars in their 1st house, which means that they're feeling a lot of motivation and pushing almost by this energy of Mars to by way of how they present themselves in the world. Like, because the 1st house is your sense of self and what motivates you and how people see you, and it's your body. So this person could be feeling a lot of motivation to start working on their body, start exercising again, and also considering what they're actually, like, what is motivating them to be in life. And that is going to be in a direct square to their career choice and their legacy, which might have likely been kind of, you know, in a place of illusion or that was undefined. Now, consider that if, for instance, this person and I were in a situation, it's like their sense of self is in conflict with my sense and need to build this thing in my life. And so that's going to create a friction within the relationship. The reason why I bring this up is because I think it puts things into context for us to look at things a little bit deeper. But let's talk on another point, and I know this video is getting long, but I just want to talk about this because of this card that showed up by way of the Emperor. Now, as I said, Mars is up in Gemini, but let's look at what's going on in Aries, because the Emperor also references Aries. In Aries, ooh, look at that. We have this little grouping right here in Aries. And if you've looked up at the sky at night to the western horizon, you've likely seen two of these three players here, which is Jupiter, Venus, and Chiron. Now, when we consider that Jupiter, Venus, and Chiron are all in Aries right now, and they're all in close proximity, it's as if we have the planet of Jupiter expanding and bringing light to some kind of wound that we've carried with us through our life. And the energy of Venus is there for us to have some kind of compassion toward it, and yet it's creating almost like this bubble for us to examine this aspect of ourselves. And how do we work with that, right? That's something that I think, you know, a lot of us have been trained to kind of like push away. And yet when it comes up, right, it's bubbling up to the surface for us to do something to work with it. And I think it's interesting that, you know, these cards are on the table today, and it's actually in a lot of ways pointing to, you know, where we need to get down to brass tacks and get more serious in our life and what's actually important and of value. And it's particularly important for people who are in my age group, which would be, you know, anyone born from like 74 to 81. And I say that age group particularly because we have this huge freaking transit going on by way of Uranus as well, which is also working to upset some of the things that we've been dealing with. Now, the Uranus transit is going on in Taurus, and Uranus has an orbit around the sun of 84 years. So it's around 42 years old, 46 years old, that we are experiencing this Uranus transit, because Uranus sits in any one sign for about 7 years. So it's like having a slingshot of change be brought into your life, so that it's giving you this opportunity to, in a lot of ways, let go of the past and put your energy and your effort toward which you want to build in the future. And I think that this kind of transit that we're experiencing right now with Chiron and Jupiter and Venus, in a lot of ways, is trying to help us out with that, because it's highlighting, you know, that wounded warrior, right? The wounded healer of Chiron, so that we can work with it, so that we can heal it, so that we can go into the next phase of our lives. So again, if you are interested in understanding more about your astrology chart and how these influences are showing up for you, reach out. We can schedule some time and look at that together. I do my readings over Zoom so that you will have a visual to look at, and I can point at things, and you can, you know, keep it after it's recorded and refer back to it if you'd like. So if that's something that you'd, you know, be interested in, reach out. Also, if you're interested in even learning more about Saturn transits or Uranus transits or Jupiter transits, because they have really big shifting energy in our lives, let me know, because I am building some of those classes and I'd love to have you there. I hope you are well. I send you a good wish, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.